So hi guys, I know we have made you wait for some time, and I know you know that we are from India, and I know that Indian time is always on time, isn't it, guys? So by the way, before I kind of start and before Pulkit is here, so we're very good friends by the way, and somehow we kind of are sharing the stage again. We were sharing the stage last week, and we're sharing the stage again. So I think we're just in love with each other, maybe, right? And we just come back again and again, right?
Uh,
Okay, so as always, Pulkit and I'm here, so I'm gonna jump in and introduce myself first to all of you, right? So my name is Akarsh Singh, right? I am also the CEO and co-founder of a startup called Saro, which is kind of works with data privacy compliance. I'm also a fellow in information privacy, one of the youngest to be there, guys, right? CIPPE, CIPM, CIPT, right? I kind of hold a lot of them. I'm also in IPP advisory boards, and yeah, I think I have a podcast that I run. It's called Privacy Cast. So yeah, few things for me. I think we'll just kind of do that, right? Kind of have that conversation with Pulkit. But I just want to kind of let everyone know, right, that today we're going to talk about data privacy in India. I know we're very hot in topic right now, and I think the upcoming law and the last 2 years have been, the parliament is coming up, the government is coming with new versions of the law, and the law again is under consideration. So yes, I think again maybe in the summer session now in India, we will be seeing a new law that will be tabled, and that is exactly why internationally we are kind of want to know more about the law, because I think there are some beautiful requirements there. One of them is data localization, right, and a few more, right. And the moment the data localization kind of works in, right, it kind of becomes more and more beautiful for everyone, because then all the organizations in the world kind of get affected by the Indian law. And I know that is exactly where we kind of need to think twice about that. Okay, so I think Pulkit is kind of trying to join in, but till then, I think I have a few slides for you. So today we're going to talk about data protection bill and privacy technology. And I have a small request for all of you who have joined this session, right? So my sincere request to all of you is drop in all the questions that you have about the bill. And maybe I and Pulkit may be the right guys to answer you about this, right? And kind of, solve a few things for you. Okay. So I cannot hear you, but I can see all your chats, right? So if you can drop any questions in the chat, we'll be very happy to kind of take up all the questions that you want us to take. Okay, so we're going to talk about data protection bill, and then we're going to talk about how the technology is going to kind of affect everything around us, right? As and when we kind of get into the bill, because obviously, I think everybody who kind of knows privacy today knows that privacy affects technology, and obviously, when we talk about privacy in the world, we talk about data privacy in online privacy, right? And when we talk about online privacy, we are always talking about data flows. And I think talking about data flow, I just want to kind of let a secret to everyone in that when we are talking about any data privacy in the world, we start with data, right? We start with data identification, right? And that is why it kind of becomes more and more beautiful. Okay, so work with them. So okay, cool. So I think the agenda for today, right, is a few things that we're going to talk about, right? So we're going to talk about the data protection bill. Then we're going to talk about some definitions of the bill. Then obviously we want to move on and talk about some grounds of processing. I know people who know GDPR, who know CCPA, know what we're talking about when we're talking about grounds of processing. All right. And then we're going to talk about some requirements of the bill, and then how it is going to impact, and then obviously what are the rights as citizens get because of this law. And right, obviously any law that kind of comes in for privacy kind of is for the citizens, right? We're talking about data privacy rights, we're talking about what principles are to be followed, right? And then we will get into it. But I have a sincere request to all of you. Again, I know a lot of people are online and live. My sincere question is, any questions that you have, any questions that you're here for, please ask them, right? And don't think twice. Okay, so now let's kind of think about grounds of processing. Okay, so I kind of talk about a lot of maturity questions when I am kind of speaking, because we know something about GDPR today, right? We're not so new to this, right? Because we have seen something happening in Europe, we have seen something happening in California, Africa, right? Everywhere we have a privacy law, right? So it's not new, right? taking a user consent is not new. Everybody has used Facebook, everybody has started WhatsApp, and whenever Instagram, right? The moment you kind of log in, the concept of consent pops in, right? The concept of consent pops in. So one of the also grounds of processing, legal basis of processing in Indian law, upcoming Indian law, is also consent, right? Because consent kind of holds a lot of power when we're talking, especially B2C, right? When we are doing B2C as a business, a lot of things kind of run on consent. Today, even in India, right, not having a privacy law, we still have IT Act, right, SPDI, and I know again technical people here who would have done a transfer impact assessment and data would have been transferred to India would have definitely wrote this law down. But if you have not done that, you can look it up. It's not such a stringent act, but still, right? We have something that goes in our TIAs, goes in our PIAs, right? So then what else options we have, right? We have the purpose of employment, right? Again, and also purpose of employment can also be taken as, we kind of call it purpose of employment a lot of times, but it's also under contract, right? The moment kind of that contract thingy comes in, most of the time it kind of becomes for employee data, right? And obviously I know that because of Facebook's Irish DPC's decision, right? We know that Facebook kind of said that Facebook argued that the data that Facebook was taking was based on a contract, right? EULA, not a EULA exactly, but a end user agreement, right, that they are signing. So it kind of became very interesting. But I did a poll on LinkedIn trying to ask all the privacy community what do they think, right? Kind of works for Facebook. I think that's consent, but again, that's totally debatable as well. But yeah, so that's one option is consent. The second option is very similar to GDPR globally. It's employment, right? The third option that you have is compliance, the local compliance. It can be tax, it can be finance, right? And then obviously we have our other options like vital interest, right? Are very similar to GDPR. Grounds of processing are very similar to GDPR. Pulkit, I think your network is down, right? So let me kind of introduce you, right? Maybe I'll kind of do that justice for you.
Okay.
So guys, Pulkit Vohra is a data protection officer in British Telecom, right? He kind of takes care of India, Asia, Middle East, and Africa right now. Before this, Pulkit was part of Intel team as a privacy specialist, and before that, obviously PwC, right? And I know Pulkit since he was in PwC, and we have both seen privacy heads on since GDPR kind of started applying. And Pulkit is one of the guys in India, especially, who knows a lot in privacy. And every time I get a question, I call him. So I think the best thing for all of you would be to follow him on LinkedIn and maybe ask questions, drop him text, right? And he would kind of he always answers, I know, right? And I got a lot of feedback from him. He's the right guy to kind of post all the questions of Indian law, right? He's that guy. So guys, also in the chat box, right? I can see a lot of people live. So guys, can we quickly say a hi, right? Let's start in the chat box with a hi, guys. Yeah. So I'm just gonna say hi to all of you, and I'm gonna let this chat box open to you for so that you can say hi. Obviously, I know it's okay. So we have Pavas says hi, guys. Yeah, hi Pavas. Pulkit, hey Greg, hi David, hi Joseph, hi Nitin, hey guys, hey Rajeshwari, good to see you again. Yeah, I know you would have said that. Yeah, Rajeshwari. Okay, so we have a lot of people, right? And then probably getting back to my slides, right? So Pulkit, what is your network status right now?
I'm just trying to switch to mobile hotspot,
Mhm.
Akash. So you can continue
Okay,
the slides while I switch it.
okay, perfect. Let me know whenever your network is better. Until
Sure,
then, I'll take it up, right? I am never
sure.
sad on that. So coming on to data subject rights, right? So data subject rights, I think the beauty about Indian law, right now, right, and I think that kind of has flown in from across the globe, right? If you look at CCPA, if you look at the Indian law, if you look at the Singaporean law, if you look at the Australian law, right, we all are influenced by the same principles of GDPR and similar user rights, right? We follow the same thing in India. So I think everybody who's here on this call to understand, right, what will happen tomorrow, right? So I just want to kind of assure you today that after reading the law so many times, I can assure you that a lot of things that have already been done in GDPR or in a global context can still be taken up. We can still say that 70% of GDPR kind of already applies. So whatever compliance you're following globally, right? So also I think there's a concept called rationalizing, right? So if you study into privacy, right, into concepts, we talk about rationalizing. So if we have global compliance in our bucket and I'm a data protection officer, then I'll rationalize, right, what all laws do we have, and then kind of create a central framework and then create a lot of other controls for that jurisdiction. So kind of if we look at the PDP, right, the Indian Personal Data Protection Bill, the beauty about the bill is it kind of applies very similar to GDPR, right? Okay, so I think we are good with that. Now I think what also happened in December, right? The thing that happened in December, a few days back, the Joint Parliamentary Committee, right, set up by the government on the law to give a review on the law, gave a lot of feedback on the law, right? So they gave a feedback. So one of the feedbacks that they gave is the government should have more access to the data, right? So they kind of volunteered for the government and said that the government should have more access to the data. Plus, one more thing that they kind of said is the social media platforms, right, need to have some source of authenticity, right? Their point is that if social media platforms are not making sure about authenticity of the users, then it will become an issue because there are a lot of bots internationally, that are being used, right? And especially after Cambridge Analytica, we all are kind of scared end of day because we don't know, right, what type of posts are coming, whether this is a bot that is doing, who's liking what, right? And that is the same case, I think, globally right now. But still, the Indian government kind of came in and said, the JPC kind of came in and said that, hey, these are a few more recommendations, right, that will become a bit different in India. Plus, I think one of the problems which international organizations are seeing in India is the data localization requirements, right? So data localization requirements are not new, by the way. So if you look at a company like Mastercard, if you look at like company like Amex, right, the American companies with financial information of Indians, right? So the RBI, the regulator of finance in India, has already kind of put in a regulation where they have mandated all the organizations, right, to kind of make sure that the data is localized for all the financial transactions, right, which was not happening before that. Okay, so that has already happened. So we are some way ahead, right, when we kind of post a thing like data localization. So data localization is not new for India. I'm kind of pointing out there, but also data localization will become more and more prominent because government has defined data into three types right now: the normal personal data, the sensitive personal data, and then they have called one more category of personal data. And that category of personal data has the third category of personal has not been defined yet. But once it gets kind of defined, then that data specifically will not be allowed for any organization to take back to any other country, right? And that will become a huge issue. Plus, the data localization requirement is kind of the problem again is that if you're kind of transferring sensitive data outside India, then you also need to keep a copy of that data, right? And again, I think this kind of happened because of a past case, right, where the government wanted data, but the data was not in Indian jurisdiction, and the other government kind of refused the Indian government, the Indian High Court, to kind of get that data. And that kind of made these things unpopular. And JPC kind of today is coming up with more and more guidelines, more and more stringent guidelines on data protection. So yeah, I won't call Indian data protection law draconian right now, but still, if you compare GDPR to PDP, the Personal Data Protection Bill, we are, I think we are a bit more stringent for an international organization in India because of data localization, and everything else. And I think kind of falls in a very similar place, right, as to what it already was. But yeah, definitely on this place on data localization, same things. The problem is kind of increasing, right? Okay, so guys, any questions? Okay, let me kind of take questions first. I know data localization has a lot of questions.
I kind of responded to a couple of questions, Akash.
Okay, so Pulkit, would
Uh,
you like to take
mm,
those questions online as well? Maybe explain synthetic data, because I have been personally working on synthetic data and my research papers are coming in on that. So I
mm.
will also definitely take that up. But I want you to kind of take up and explain everybody, and then I'll take back.
No, Akash, I'll let you because do that because I don't have that experience with synthetic data yet. unfortunately. So
Okay.
yeah, if you can do that.
So basically, census, right? I think census data kind of again will be governed by the privacy law, right? But I think there is also kind of a caveat in the law which kind of allows the government to take data as and when the government needs, right? So it kind of becomes a legal obligation as in the global laws as well. So I think that kind of will pop in the global law. But I think when we talk about synthetic data, Christine, right? So I've been working on synthetic data for some time now because for our privacy technology, right? So synthetic data, what Indian context is, I think one of the things that I want to kind of let you in a secret, right, from India, right, just between you and me, right. So India, I think the Indian context, I think we are still not developed enough. You know, the thought process in Indian IT industry is still not developed enough to kind of go for synthetic data. But what has happened is pseudonymization, right? Pseudonymization is very famous here, right? So I can see a lot of companies doing encryption, finding other ways to kind of encrypt the data or pseudonymize the data, right? In their beautiful manners, right? A lot of technology folks. I think India kind of is full with technology folks, right? And we kind of keep finding that that simple solution to that problem. So I know encryption becomes costly, time taking, right? But I think a lot of Indians have figured out a lot of things, right? Custom seeding, right? Simple things, microservices, right? How to kind of keep those data differentiated, right? So I think that has happened, Christine, right? But believe me, I have been working on synthetic data myself, right? But India doesn't have that market right now, right? If I'm talking about business right now, and nothing else. I think David kind of okay. So Pulkit has taken that question.
And just to add on to synthetic data, Akash, the JPC had a comment on the use of algorithms as well, and they wanted the law to be fair across the algorithmic use. So we may be seeing some of the restrictions around the use of algorithms, especially in machine learning. And JPC's idea, again, just to reiterate, JPC is the committee who is discussing the India Privacy Bill right now. So their viewpoint is whenever algorithm is being used to create a synthetic data or for any other purpose, we have to be transparent with the data subjects and even go to the extent of defining that algorithm in our privacy notices. So they want to really use the term algorithmic fairness, and we could see some restrictions coming into place around use of algorithms in the new law. We don't still know what those requirements would be, but there would be something definitely there.
All right. I think definitely, Pulkit. I think I kind of missed that. And I think including non-personal data, I think synthetic data would
Mm,
itself kind of come in to that
yeah.
picture. I think very fairly put through, Pulkit. So Pulkit, would you like to take some this slide for everyone? I think you're the best guy to kind of
Hmm.
procedural requirements for organizations under PDP, right? So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sure. So this the under the PDPB or under the any data protection law, it generally talks about how do you create a privacy program in your organization. And you could I'll not go through each one of them, but what PDPB says is you need to be aware of where your data is. So you need to do that data mapping exercise, create an inventory of all your personal sensitive personal data, and it would be helpful for the organizations to do that because PDPP is slightly different in the way it categorizes personal data. Like in GDPR, you have personal data or special categories of data. Two categories, right? So in PDPB, we have four categories: personal data, sensitive personal data, critical data, and now fourth category is non-personal data, which they want to include in the upcoming bill. So if you don't know what your data is, you would not be able to comply with the India law. So you need to do that data mapping exercise. Um, then, as per the law, your data protection program has to include the security of data, have those technical and organizational measures in place, and that's a place where it does not really deviate from the GDPR requirements. GDPR also talk about the use of TOMs. PDPP also use TOMs as well. Then it also talks about the third-party data lifecycle activities, so the vendor assessment and reviewing the contracts and standardizing your data protection clauses. Now, there may be follow-up guidelines from the regulator of India once the bill is enacted, and they might come up with their own data protection clauses that you would need to include in your contracts with your suppliers, your vendors. So you would need to uplift your contracts if you are transferring personal data to them. Um, have that culture of privacy with the awareness and training sessions. So that's always important when you talk about India as a region. We have a lot of geographical and cultural diversity, and unfortunately, we don't have that privacy maturity in place, when we compare ourselves to Europe. So once the law is enacted, it will be a challenge for every organization to become that privacy mature, make every single employee understand the importance of the new law, how it's going to impact their organization. So it will be a crucial task for the data privacy team of that organization, for the DPO, to kind of develop that culture, develop that maturity in an organization. Because always have that thought that the core data protection team is not the only people who are responsible for your data protection program. Every single employee who is working on that organization is responsible for that, and they are part of what you can call it as an invisible data protection team. Um, so once we have the bill passed from the parliament, there is a talk that there would be a grace period of 24 months, similar to what GDPR gave us. So at that time, it will be crucial for the organizations to revisit their data protection program if they have an existing one, and see how it differs from the requirements that are defined in the India privacy law. And if you don't have a data protection program, you would need to define one. You would need to implement one.
We're able to
Mhm.
hear it. So, Pulkit, would I also like to kind of talk about the current situation of the data transfers that are happening and how they will kind of be impacted once we have the data protection bill?
Mm. Okay, sure. So right now, the data transfers, because we don't have a privacy law in place, we don't really have any restrictions around data transfer per but it really depends on your organization data protection policy. You might be um, following a certain law, most probably GDPR as a gold standard, and might your legal entity, which is in India, might be a signatory of the binding corporate rules. So you would be following a standard process across the organization. So the data transfers right now, if you leave the call data records and the payment data, there is no restriction of it being stored in India. So you can transfer the data across boundaries. Of course, with the right data protection clause in place, if you're doing it to a third party, and if you're doing an intra-company transfer, of course, if you're a signatory of the BCR, you are protected. You are transferring to a country which offers a similar level of protection. But in any case, whenever you do a cross-border data transfer, even if you don't have privacy regime in place in your originating country, always do the transfer impact assessment TIA, which will help you kind of assess those privacy risks of what the risks are when you're transferring the data from one country to another. And yeah, suppose if you're transferring the data from European country to India, the TIA would be crucial because they would assess the risk of the transferring of data to a country which doesn't have a privacy regime. And in those cases, it comes down to how you are storing the data in India, how who all has have access to it. So the transfer impact assessment exercise is something that your organization must be doing. But once, and Akash briefly talked about data localization requirement that will come up in the new bill. So once that is there, again, that initial data mapping exercise would be important for you to understand what all sensitive personal data you're processing, what all critical personal data you're processing, because there is a requirement that you would need to store a mirror copy of both sensitive data and critical personal data in
So,
India.
Pulkit, basically, if so, kind of, I think the same point. I think we kind of came back to, right. The issues that are there today is the critical personal data, right? The third category of personal data that the government is about to define, and we still have no clue, right? And even being in India, I think it kind of becomes very difficult because if you look at India, right, Pulkit, I think we are host of every company in the world, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Every company in the world kind of takes takes their back offices at least in India, right? and
Mm-hmm.
and then I think the moment kind of critical Indian data pops up, right? So I think, Pulkit, what is your point when we kind of talk about, let's say, support functions, right? So if, let's say, some company, right, let's say company X, right, which is a global company, right, and they have one
Mm-hmm.
office in India, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
and if, let's say, tomorrow critical personal data kind of pops up saying it's Aadhaar number, right, the identification number, the health identification number, right? So kind of how do you think, if, let's say, that comes under critical data, then how do you think as a global organization gonna get impacted with that issue? Because, yeah, over to you, because support functions are not in India. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a challenge, and that's why this is the right time for each organization which is operating a support function in India to do that data migration exercise. I'm again reiterating the same thing because it is critical, because you have some differentiators in the categories of data with respect to the India privacy law. So in case where you identify any sensitive data and the critical personal data, of course you don't know what that critical personal data would be because the law really doesn't define that. But when it's defined, what you need to do is to do a cost impact analysis, like understand how can you bring the data from the database or server who is hosting your data outside the country now, and bring it in the country, at least a mirror copy of it, and then work on some solution external service providers who can help you create that database, create that, maybe a CSP, a cloud service provider who has a data center in India, and store that data. And how you would do that? You would do that by talking to the management, get the management buy-in, uh, help them understand the cost impact, help them understand the regulatory impact of you not being able to adhere to the data localization requirement. But again, just to bring in one point, in my experience, because when I was complying with the China privacy law as well, which came into effect later last year, they also had a concept of important data, and it was not defined anywhere what that important data means. And important data can only be stored in India as per their sorry, in China as per their requirement. And then it was made clear that the important data is any data which affects the national security of the country. So I would assume that the critical personal data would be around the same aspect which affect the national security, maybe something which is being processed by the critical information, critical infrastructure operators, CIOs. But we'll have to see what those important data is. But right now, as a start, what you need to do is at least you know what sensitive personal data is as per the law. And if you are processing any of the sensitive personal data and you're storing it out about Indian citizens and you're storing it outside the country, start talking to your management, talking to the IT teams of how you can bring it in India, and how you can start storing it in India. And then once you have more clarity on the critical personal data, of course, I'm assuming that the regulator will give us some time to comply with the requirements. They can't just say that, hey, you need to store the critical personal data from day two onwards. It can't work like that. Hopefully, they will not do that. But yeah, once you have that clarity, again, at least you will have an infrastructure in place in India because you are storing sensitive data already, and then you can bring in all the critical personal data as well. But the important thing is you need to start right now, start having those conversations with your management, with your IT, of how you can bring in the sensitive personal data from outside India to India, at least a better copy of it.
All right, Pulkit. I think, Pulkit, I think we're together towards the end of this session as well, right?
Yeah,
I think we have
already.
seven more minutes to kind of end this. But Christine, right? Uh, I think David, right? I think you had questions. I think if your answers have been taken up, right? Uh, I think that kind of makes sense. But I'll kind of take in David's question again, right? Till somebody else also pops in a question here. Uh, I think David kind of, I think, very fair enough. I think I was talking to Trevor. I think. I think last week, and we were talking about the African law, right? And when we were talking about African, so IBP itself was kind of working to kind of harmonize the African laws, right? And I think it kind of makes sense for an organization like IBP to kind of guide, right? Maybe globally, right, where we kind of get into some context where we can normalize, because once you are a DPO, a head of DPO, right, for a company, right, it kind of, you also need to kind of harmonize, right, see what laws kind of apply, what laws do not apply, right? And what kind of controls apply, what kind of controls do not apply. And the moment you kind of start doing a TIA or a transfer of data, right, it becomes so complex, right? Then the business itself gets scared to kind of transfer data, right? Then they're like, I think if it's too difficult, we'll just do it here itself, right? And I think that kind of complexity, I think it's kind of being privacy professionals, I think you have to decrease that complexity and not increase that complexity. And I think David, I think I'm with you, David, on this, right? And I think if we can do something on this to kind of harmonize it, maybe copy paste GDPR everywhere in the world, right? So that it becomes easy for everyone
Yeah.
to kind of, get ahead and do our work. So I would
I
love that,
really
by
hope
the
it
way.
would have been on Earth, Akash. Like I would have like copy pasted GDPR everywhere. But as I said to David, also there are so many external factors as well that all the countries would want to do something different. I mean, for example, in the India law, they call data controller as data fiduciary, right? I mean, it's just like a term difference, but there's still a difference. But that doesn't do any harm to us. But if you're bringing in a data localization requirement that kind of really affects an organization and affects the data protection team, and you won't believe like how hard it is for me to kind of track all the changes right now. I mean, I have just a simple Excel, which I call as a data protection dashboard, where I keep track of the changes. But here and there, I also miss out certain things. If I am doing a PIA which affects like 15 countries in the Asia Pacific region, I tend to miss out certain specifications. Like Malaysia has a strong requirement on consent. They see it consent as a only legal basis of processing, and I have to talk to the application owner and see whether for the Malaysia data subjects we can only implement consent as a legal basis, and in other countries we can remove consent. It becomes difficult. I mean that I think every DPO, every data protection team in an organization would want to have the data harmonization in place, but it's just becoming harder and harder. I mean, I'm not seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, it's just getting dark and
Just
dark.
getting
But I
darker and
really hope
darker.
so. Yeah, exactly. I really hope
Rather
so.
than getting
That
lighter and
comes
lighter, it's
together.
getting darker and
Yeah,
darker.
yeah.
I think we are increasing jobs in this field. I think that's what governments are doing. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
good for the
that's
economy, but
exact. Yeah. So I think we have one question, right, which is so Pavas has asked, right, how similar is PDPB to other data protection laws, right? So I think Pavas, probably 70%, right, 70% to 75%. But I think with the advent of things like data localization, right, and as Pulkit kind of mentioned, critical data, right, sensitive data, right, it becomes. I think that they're kind of made it complex for everyone around the world to kind of look at Indian law. But obviously, yes, we will see how it goes. I think we're still waiting for the final draft, right, to get passed and become a law. So I think we'll see everything in March or May, right, March, April, May. I think we'll have the final draft, and if it passes, then we'll have everything that we were looking for. So I think Pulkit, I think we are kind of towards the end of the session, right? And
yeah.
again, I can see that you're freezing. Uh, I think we're good then. Yeah, I think we're good. So yeah, yeah. So sure, everyone. I think probably I will just kind of take up for Pulkit, right? So I think I just want to thank all of you first of all to join this session, to spend time, and special thanks to Christina and David to ask the right questions, right? Uh, Pulkit, I'm sorry, but we cannot hear you, Pulkit, and your voice is because of bad internet. So yeah, so guys, I think I'm just gonna thank everyone
Can you hear me now?
from Pulkit's side, right? So first of all, right? So Vani Palla, I can see you now. I don't know why that would have happened, but yeah. So Vani, are you there? So guys, yeah. So I think we are very good, and I think probably we're gonna get ahead to the next step, right? And kind of. So Vani Palla, I think I can. So I think there's your videos on, maybe, yeah. So sure, guys. I think that's how it is, and have a nice day. And I think I will see you again, obviously, right? I think later or sooner we'll catch up again. And yeah, guys, and I will see you. Have a nice day. Bye.